Hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here today with Stacey Searle. Stacey is a student of mine. She was on my FME Learn Online revision course leading up to the September 2022 exams, and her performance was absolutely brilliant. Stacey earned 80% in that exam sitting on SBL, and I didn't want to miss the opportunity to talk to her about her experience, both preparing for the exam and in the exam, the challenges that she faced and how she overcame them. And I think that a lot of you listening to this are probably in a similar situation and wondering, how you could do it, and if you could do it. Well, clearly you can, and Stacey's living proof of that. So, Stacey, welcome to this show, recording, whatever you want to call it. And congratulations again.
Oh, thank you.
You're very welcome, Stacey. Okay, so if you don't mind, I'd like to kick off with a brief kind of summary of your ACCA journey so far, when you started, how many papers you sat, how well you did throughout, and so on.
Yeah, so I started, it's probably going on 6 or 7 years ago now.
Okay,
But I started and I had to do the foundation papers because I didn't go to university. So I actually had to start completely from scratch.
right.
And I was actually living abroad at the time. So that's why had a bit of a gap. So I did quite a few papers in one go, and then I had a gap of a year or two, and then continued when I got back to the UK to
Wow.
carry through
Okay.
my papers.
Yeah. So what was it that made you decide? I mean, you know, what happened? You suddenly have some kind of epiphany, I want to be an ACCA, or was there something else that,
No, so I started out as a receptionist,
okay,
working for stockbrokers in London. And then the opportunity arose to start in the accounts department. So they advertised for a job, just doing accounts payable, that type of thing. And it was
right,
something I've had no experience in, anything like that. So I applied for it and I got the job. And so I really just started from the bottom, and I had experience first. So I did a few years of accounts payable, and that type of bank reconciliations, that kind of role. And then a few years into it, I thought, you know what, I think this is for me. So I started my ACCA journey from there, really.
right. Well, that's brilliant. Stacey, I think so many of us um, don't wake up, after university or even after school, after we finish school, and say, I want to be an accountant, I want to be an ACCA. It's something that we kind of ease into over time because of circumstances we find ourselves in. And it's great that, I mean, you started, right from the beginning. You did a number of papers all at once, and then you took another break. Was it difficult getting back into studying?
Yeah, it was. It definitely is. I think one thing that I would do differently is not to ever lose the momentum of doing the exams. But
Right.
I think because we moved country, so it was quite a big transition. So it seemed like the right idea at the time. And then, yeah, that's why I took such a long break, because just to get my motivation back to study again was quite difficult. I was kind of putting it off and putting it off. And
Yeah,
then as soon as I got back into it, yeah, it was fine. And then I just kind of non-stop since then.
absolutely. Once you're in the groove, so to speak,
Yeah,
it's easier to keep going. But
oh,
getting back in
definitely.
there is must have been tough. Was there something that kind of pushed you to go back, or was
I
it just
always knew
something?
I always knew I was going to do it.
Okay,
So it was just, well, we moved back to the UK and then we got married, so we had a wedding to plan and that kind of stuff. So I just thought I'll just do it after. So,
right,
but
right.
I always knew I was going to go back to it. It was never a question of not finishing.
Right. Well, that's great. So you had your mind fixed on achieving this goal,
Yeah.
and good for you. You did it. So, okay. So now, I mean, was SBL the first strategic professional paper that you sat?
No, so I actually sat advanced financial management, and I failed that one before I did this one. So that was the first one I did, because I did financial management and then I went straight on to advanced financial management.
Right.
I thought that would be the best way to do it, but um, yeah, I didn't pass that one. And then I'd already started studying for SBL, so I thought I'll just continue with my studies and then I'll resit at a later date.
Understood. So a couple of questions. The first is, how did you prepare for your AFM?
So I study from home. So I just have I use Kaplan as a material provider, and I just study from home. So I just take their books. I go through the whole book first, read through, do the test your understandings, little tests, and then they do an exam kit. So it's a book that's got a load of questions.
Right.
And then I just go and just practice on the questions after that. But yeah.
Okay, so I mean, self-learning AFM, I mean, that's a big deal, quite frankly. I'm not sure I could do it. So what was it, do you think, that let you down in the exam then?
Oh, yeah, no, I know. For the first time ever, I didn't fully answer a question. So I've never, every exam I've done so far, even if I'm not 100% sure, I've always took a stab at it and at least made an attempt. And there was one question, and I think it was only worth 10 marks or so anyway. But I couldn't work out what they were asking me. And that was my biggest problem, not being able to interpret what the question was. And even afterwards, I couldn't work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, generally, I mean, were you close? Were you close to a pass mark with
It's
AFM?
3 marks off.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so painful, isn't it? It's frustrating.
Oh, I think because the question as well, I kind of understood the bones of it. So I understood, but there were a couple of wordings in there, and I just didn't know what it meant. So I just thought I'm good. What I'm writing down might be nonsense here. So I kind of left it and moved on. And now I think, oh, maybe I'd just made an attempt at it. I might have got something. So
yeah. No, I get that. We always do a post-mortem, and we make ourselves feel worse sometimes by doing it. So okay, so moving on to SBL, so that brings me to my second question, which is, how did you decide to do them in this order? So AFM first and then SBL.
It was purely because the last of the fundamental papers I did was financial management. So I did that one, and I thought it seems to make sense to go to advanced straight after that. But actually, upon reflection, I know even just reading the SBL stuff, there's so much stuff in there that might have been useful, or just to have that knowledge been useful to do AFM. So I've just kind of done it a bit of potluck, to be honest. Moving on to SBL next. I knew I was going to do either that or strategic reporting, but I just chose SBL instead.
Okay, potluck. Yeah, I mean, the thing about SBL is that there is, as you say, a bit of overlap with a number of other strategic professional papers, like advanced performance management, for example, or even SBR. There are topics which are common, but looked at in slightly different ways from different perspectives. So yeah, it's not a bad idea, I would suggest. Obviously, everyone has their own preferences, but it's not a bad idea to do SBL fairly early on in the strategic professional stage. So you decided on SBL, you started, how? Same thing, self-study?
Yeah, so just from the same provider, I just ordered books, and it was the same again. You get a study material book, then you get an exam kit, and you get a little pocket book with it. So I just, as soon as I'd finished my AFM, while I was waiting for the results, I just started working my way through the book.
Right. But with SBL, you decided not to do it all on your own and you came to me or to FME, and we worked together on the revision course.
Yeah.
What was it that made you make that decision?
I was so overwhelmed. I was
by what?
By the book was huge to begin with. It was massive, and I've always put such an emphasis on learning the material. But then I looked at the mock exam when I was partway through the material, and I just felt quite overwhelmed with it. I had no idea really how to answer the questions or what format I was supposed to do it in or anything like that. So I just think the whole thing, looking so different to all the other exams, I just thought I need some help with this. I'm just going to go into it blind otherwise.
Yeah, I think you touched on a couple of really important points, Stacey. I mean, the first is SBL is very different to the other exams. One of the biggest differences is that it's one case study and all the questions relate to that case study. The other difference is that in the tasks, your answer has to kind of touch on a number of different areas across the syllabus. So it's not like one question is about one topic, say corporate governance, and the next question is about risk. It's not like that. It's very integrated. Is that what you found too?
Yeah, definitely,
Mm,
definitely. So I think the biggest issue I had when I was trying to answer the questions on my own is that I don't know what they're wanting as an answer, and exactly that. I don't know if they're looking for me to just give them all my knowledge on corporate governance or give them all my knowledge on something else. So it was just really answering the
yeah.
questions that I was not doing very well, I don't think.
Yeah, no, I say it was obviously the right move for you, Stacey, because the thing about SBL is that getting feedback is critical because we
Yeah,
don't know what we're doing wrong till somebody tells us. Is the format right? Is the level of detail right? Am I actually answering the question? Do I understand what this guy's talking about here?
yeah.
All of this. So having a second kind of mind looking at it with you, is certainly helpful. So what made you decide to come to FME? And I'm happy to say me.
I think I mean, I watched the video that you did for ACCA. I think you did a webinar, and I'd already kind of Googled looking into getting a tutor, but I knew I'd already done quite a lot of the study material. So at that point, I didn't want to do a whole course, but I knew that I needed help with the revision and
Right.
somebody to mark a mock, most importantly to me, somebody to mark my questions and give me some feedback. So I Googled and you were the first name that came up. And then I saw you on the webinar. So I just thought, oh, it's meant to be.
Oh,
Oh,
it's meant to be. Well, I'm pleased to hear that the search engine is working then.
yeah.
If I was first on the list,
Yeah,
but
I think 'cause I did specifically for SBL, and I think it was your
right,
Facebook page that came up. So I
right,
just thought, yeah, I definitely need to do. After seeing your webinar,
yeah,
I just thought, yeah, I need him to help me out.
great. Well, obviously, I'm delighted that you made that decision. So what was your experience of the revision course?
Oh, so helpful, so helpful. There were so many tips that you gave me. It was that I think we had that first conversation, and it kind of changed my whole mindset how to approach the question. Because I think some of my study material, the exam kit, was a bit dated. So, because I know that the exam format changed a few years ago, a lot of the questions were asking you to explain the models or to bring up the models or that kind of stuff. So that really threw me through a loop when I looked at
Yeah,
the modern mock compared to the old exam format. So even just having that change of mindset of how I should be answering, it was just, yeah, it completely changed the way I was answering the questions
mm,
and making it a lot easier and just being able to be more organized. I think that was the most important thing because I felt so overwhelmed with the whole case study and just having that time to plan. And I think that was the most important part, being able to spend that first hour planning, but then also being given advice on how to plan and where to take my information from. So yeah, it completely changed the way I was studying. It helped tremendously.
well, I'm delighted to hear that, Stacey, that it added so much value and gave you structure
Mm,
to your approach, and of course that's always the aim. Each student is different. We study differently, we learn differently. We answer questions differently. But there's one thing that all students, I think, benefit from, and that is a structured approach.
yeah.
Especially with something as enormous as SBL. So moving on now to the exam. I mean, 80%, for goodness sake.
Oh, thank
You
you.
work way too hard. So did you expect that when you walked out?
No, no, not at all, not at all. Because I'd failed my last exam, I think I was a bit in my own head about it. So I just thought, and even though I did study really hard for the last one, I
Yeah.
just thought there's no way I'm failing this one. I just need to just practice, practice, practice. Um, So which is what I did. I just did question after question after question. I found that was the best. And planning and doing that mock a week before was really
Right.
helpful, because I have done mocks before under exam conditions, but then maybe I'm not, because I know that no one's marking it. Maybe I don't take it as seriously as what I did for doing this mock this time round.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you know, when you're working with somebody, then there is a bit of self-discipline that you impose, you know, on yourself, and that of course helps. But what was your feeling when you ended the real exam? You know, what
Um,
did you how did you think you'd done?
I didn't feel very confident, to be honest,
Mm,
but only because there was one question in particular, and it was one of the higher marked questions, where I wrote quite a lot for it, and I thought in my head I was going to answer it one of two ways. So, and it was interpreting the question, just knowing what they've asked me. So I just kind of went with one way and just hoped that it was exactly right. But then I took your advice as well, where I thought, even if it's not exactly what they were after, if I just take the wording from the question and apply it to the answer, hopefully I can scrape by.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a really, I think, powerful technique. The thing to remember always is that yes, we can copy paste from the question, but then we need to use that to add value to our answer. Yes, something that comes from within us, but using the wording to kind of focus what we say. Yeah, I mean there are lots and lots of those little tips and tricks that I've developed, and along with students, who tell me these things work, and so I bring them into the program, and share them with everyone. So
Yeah,
you know clearly that works. So we haven't mentioned. Are you working at the moment, Stacey?
yeah.
Right. So you've got a full-time job, is that right?
Yeah.
And you did all the work for AFM on your own, and the earlier papers, I guess, and the tuition for SBL all on your own. How on earth did you manage to organize your time?
I just I work through lunch, so my worker let me have a little meeting room, and so I'll study at lunchtime, and then it's just every evening pretty much. And then
Mm,
for the weekends leading up to the exams, I study on, I think, for a month up to before then. So
yeah,
yeah, so just as much free time as possible dedicated to just really learning the material.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's really quite an impressive discipline. Were you studying on your own? Because sometimes students like, studying with a study buddy.
Yeah, this is the first time I've used anyone or had anyone to
Wow.
have a back and forth with. So the rest of the time I've just done it completely just off the book. My so job is assistant management accountant. So I do have a management accountant who is great, but I try not to bother her too much.
Mm, mm, mm.
Yeah, so everything's just been done at home on my own.
Yeah, well, no, as I say, a lot of discipline. I mean, what you mentioned you were married, so I mean, how did your husband kind of take it?
Oh,
Was he was he saying, "Where are you, Stacey? I never see you."
he's he's great. He's really great. We have kind of had to like forfeit a bit of a social life, but yeah, bless him. But yeah, he's been amazingly supportive. But I think he's
Yeah,
really keen for me to get done now, so we can kind of get back to a bit of a normal routine and
well,
just
absolutely.
work without having to study. I don't know what I'll do with my free time. I honestly don't.
I'm sure you'll feel it
Yeah, I'm
very
sure.
quickly.
Mm,
Yeah, I mean, having a partner, your spouse, who's supportive makes a lot of difference, doesn't it? Because then
yeah,
you don't feel so stressed when you go off and study. But and as you say, in the last few weeks before the exam, yes, we need to make some compromises. But you know what? It's worth it, right? You get the paper done, you get it out the way, you move on, and before you
yeah.
know it, you've qualified, and that's it. Then you have all of this free time. Speaking of which, Stacey, which papers do you have left?
So I'm doing the SBR one next. So at the moment I'm studying for that. So I've booked in to do that in December.
Right.
And so I need to pick my last optional exam, which I think I'm going to do advanced tax, because I did
Okay.
better at that than I did audit or PM. And then I
Okay.
need to resit my AFF. So I have three left,
Three left.
including the resit.
Right. And any thoughts yet on how you're going to plan for, prepare for them?
I think what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to do SBR in December, and then I think I'm going to do 2 in March. So I'll do the
Okay.
tax and my resit in March as well. So I've already kind of started to relearn AFM, just so I've got it in my mind, and then eventually I'll reset that in March. So I'm hoping in March I'll be done. Fingers crossed.
Well, we'll all be keeping our fingers crossed for you, Stacey.
Thank you.
And always remember, if you need if you just need to even chat to any of my colleagues on FME, about your thoughts and the approach you should take for their subject, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to
Oh,
do
thank
that
you.
with you. Okay, so don't be shy. Just get in touch
I
with
do
them.
think I probably will, because I've just had such a great experience this time. I think I probably will do a similar thing for the last exams, because I just do think it's worth it, just to get myself over the line and have that extra support has been
Yeah.
amazing.
I'm happy to hear you say that, Stacey. And I agree, especially at this stage, strategic professional stage, it really does make a difference to have some support.
Mm,
So again, Stacey, congratulations.
thank
What
you.
an amazing effort, amazing result. And it's so impressive that with the discipline that you've shown and the commitment that you've shown to passing, starting right at the very beginning. You really are an example to be followed. So
Oh, thank you.
no, it's true. So if I'm sure there are lots of people who'll be listening to this, well, I hope there'll be lots of people listening to this, for whom you really there you are showing people that it can be done, despite having no exemptions, despite having a full-time job, despite being married, in a relationship, all of that, it can be done. So yeah, well done, and thank you so much for sharing your experience with all of us.
Oh, thank you.
The pleasure.